Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Learn GCP with Mahesh. So in our today's video in Think and Design in GCP, the question is something like this. As a cloud architect, you need to design the entire cloud journey for a startup organization. That is the most important thing. It's a startup organization. And one of the things which they are conveying you is they don't have any dedicated networking person or a team there because it's already a small organization. They don't have a dedicated person there. What they have is a hardcore developers, talented developers with one operational guy. And this organization is having lots of innovative ideas which they want to productize using Google infrastructure. So that's what they are planning to do. And they have a strong roadmap. They had made sure that for the next 5 years, they are going to develop everything on Google Cloud platform. So that is an important thing. 5 years of roadmap. They are very clear. Now, what would be your approach as a cloud architect? What and all components you are going to propose them? So as usual, I'm trying to propose one solution which may not be the best solution, but one of the possible solutions. If you have a better solution, please let me know in the comment section. So before we jump into the solution part, the one important thing which I feel which I need to take as a cloud architect is 5 years they want to stick around with Google Cloud Platform. So this is an indication that we can use some cloud native, Google's cloud native solution, because if it is a roadmap which is like 1 year or 6 months, then you need to propose cloud agnostic solutions. But since they have a strong roadmap of 5 years, they want to be with GCP, I can take this to my advantage and propose more cloud native functions. So that's what I'm going to propose. So let's jump into the solution part. So solution part, which what I have thought is since they don't have a dedicated networking person, meaning let me try to remove that component itself in the entire GCP project. Whatever the project they create, let's remove that. Meaning the VPC itself, we'll try to remove it. Even though if they have a default VPC, even that we don't need it. So by doing this, what we achieve is the team does not need, or the startup organization does not need to think about whether the firewall rule is open, whether there's a route, whether we need to have a cloud VPN, all those things. And because they are already a startup organization, they're definitely not going to have any on-premise presence. They all the applications which they are going to build is cloud native or born in the cloud. So there's no migration, there's no interconnect, all those stuffs are not there. So let's remove the VPC itself. So that's the first activity or the step in my design which I'm going to propose. Let's try to do the next part. All right, the first step is delete the VPC. Now we don't have VPC, we don't have any firewall, nothing related to VPC networking components, no networking components. So that's the first step. The next step which I thought is as a cloud architect, not everybody will know what service will depend on VPC. So to do that, what I thought is let's go category by category like compute, storage, big data, tools, all those components, each component wise to understand whether it depends on the VPC or not. Since we have already removed the VPC, so let's go component by like module by module. So let's go with the first one, App Engine. So let's go with App Engine. And App Engine, there are two flavors, App Engine Standard, App Engine Flexible. In one of the videos, I had already shown you where App Engine Standard does not need a VPC. It is truly serverless option. And if you're trying to deploy App Engine Flexible and if you don't have a network there, it will throw you an error something like this. Network default does not exist. So that is the thing. So what it indicates is App Engine Standard can be deployed or provisioned without a VPC. So that is the first indication. Now let's move to our virtual machine, our instance, GCE instance, and let's try to create a virtual machine. And let's just click on create, and you'll get an error saying that the network is not there. Similarly, Kubernetes engine, you can still go ahead and try it, but it's not going to work. The reason is Kubernetes engine behind the scene also uses virtual machine, but just for your satisfaction or for the completeness of the video, if you just try to create a cluster with all the default setting, and you should get the same error saying that the network is not there. And if you just scroll up, you should see the network is not there. So far it's only one component or one service which we are able to provision without the VPC, that is our App Engine Standard environment. Now let's go to the cloud functions part and let's try to provision a cloud function and see whether it gets provisioned or not. So let's click on create cloud functions and let's use the default hello world example. Let's leave everything as default and let's just click on create. Alright, the cloud function has been provisioned, but just to verify whether it is really working without the VPC or not, let's click on the on the cloud function and just try it out once. So this is the endpoint, and once clicking on that, you will see the hello world is working fine. So cloud functions can be provisioned without VPC. Let's move on to the most recent compute option, which is Cloud Run, and let's try to create whether Cloud Run can be provisioned or not. So I already have a container image which I have provisioned for this demo purpose. I'm going to use this. This is a simple hello world application which uses Node 11 version, so which is not supported in Cloud Run or in App Engine stuff. So that's a thing. It's already containerized. So let me just click on. Only thing, I'm just going to make this allow so that I can access it publicly. Let me click on create. So the Cloud Run is provisioned. It shows a green tick. To verify whether the application is really working fine or not, just click on the thing and you should see it's working. So Cloud Run can also be provisioned. So now just a quick recap. Click on the hamburger menu and if you go to the compute options, App Engine Standard is possible, Cloud Functions is possible, and Cloud Run is possible without VPC. So let's move on to the storage component. The first category under storage is the first component under storage is big data. Let's try that. So in the interest of time, I've already filled in the form. So let's just click on create to see whether it gets created. So let's click on create. Okay, I did not mention the zone. Let me select it and click create. All good. It's a success. So the big table instance has been provisioned successfully. And if you click on the details, you should come to know that it does not depend on any VPC. Good. Let's move on to the next part, which is a miniature version of big table. That's what I usually call Datastore as. Now it is called as Firestore, which is the next gen version of your data store. Let's try to create it. Try to create an entity which is nothing but a row. So let's try to create the entity and let's try to give a new kind. Let's try to give a name like no VPC demo. So that's our table name or kind name, and simple just give it as name. That's only the column which we have, and let's mention it as demo no VPC. And let's try whether it gets created or not. The table has to be created, which is nothing but nine kind in data stores language, and the row should be inserted, which is nothing but entity in data stores language. It is created, so looks good. Now let's move on to the next component, which is file store, which became recently GA. And just clicking on that file store screen itself, you will see the create button gets disabled, where it indicates that you cannot create a file store without a VPC because it's a NAS storage. So without a VPC, you cannot create it. Straightforward. Let's move on to our next, the most favorite component, Google Cloud Storage, and let's try to create a bucket to see whether does it have any dependency on our VPC. Click on create bucket. So just give a name which is unique. I'm just giving my project ID. Let me make it as regional just not to avoid too much of cost. Let me use Mumbai as usual. Click continue and standard and click create. And our Google Cloud Storage bucket is also created successfully. So it can be created without a VPC. Let's move on to the next component, which is Cloud SQL. So in the interest of time, I have selected MySQL and I have filled in the details. And if you see, the most important thing for the VPC part where you need to verify it is the connectivity part. When you click on this connectivity part, you will straight away see the private IP gets disabled, and it indicates that you should have a normal standard VPC which is called as non-legacy VPC or a shared VPC. Only then you can create a private IP address, a Cloud SQL instance with private IP address. We had done this kind of demos many in our videos, so you can look into the YouTube video, and also I'll put the link in the description. And the second thing is you can still create a Cloud SQL instance which has only public IP address. I'm not going to propose this solution to the uh, startup organization. The reason is you can create it. The instance will get created, but opening up to the entire world is risky. So if you don't want to open up to the entire world, what you will do, you need to whitelist certain IP address. To add those IP address, you should know the concept, what is CIDR range, how should I put it, all those things. And since we saw in our requirement, the startup organization does not have any skills on that. So let's not emphasize this part. So let's not propose Cloud SQL for them. All right. Now let's move on to the next component, which is Cloud Spanner, horizontally scalable relational database. Let's try to create an instance and see whether it requires VPC or not. All right, I have filled in the form. Let's just click on create and see whether it gets created. All right, the instance got created, and you can create the database to verify that it is working fine or not. Let's just quickly create a database, and let's not create any table in it. Let's make it as an empty database, and let's click create to see whether at least the database gets created or not. All right, the database also gets created, so that indicates we can create Cloud Spanner also. Let's move on to the next component, the last component under storage, memory store, which is nothing but a managed Redis instance. Right away, very similar to your file store, it shows a message. The create instance gets disabled, saying that there's no VPC. So that's a straightforward indication. Now, going back as a quick recap, under storage, if you see, we had lots of components. Big table can be created, Datastore can be created, Firestore, which is a next generation version of Datastore, that can also be created. File store cannot be created. Google Cloud Storage, it can be provisioned. SQL can be provisioned, but it has you need to know a basic understanding of at least how to put the CIDR range, how to whitelist this, all those things. And we are not going to propose it because the startup organization does not have that skill set. Spanner, you can provision without a VPC. Memory store cannot be provisioned. So that's the stuff. Let's move on to the next category, networking. This entire category, we should not do anything because they don't have that skill set. So the next component is Stackdriver. So Stackdriver is an acquisition which Google did in 2014, and it is completely a software as a service option. So since it's a SaaS offering, you don't need to worry about whether it is connected to VPC, all those things. It's totally isolated there. So the entire suite of Stackdriver products can be used by the startup organization. We can propose all those things. And let's move on to the next part, which is the next part is under tools, cloud build. So let's see what is the options with cloud build. So if you come to cloud build and click on settings, you will see what are the services which can be used by, which can use which can be used in cloud build. So this is primarily a CI/CD process which you can use, activate using cloud build, and you will see cloud functions, cloud run, app engine, Kubernetes engine. These are all the services which can be used in, you can write a cloud build pipeline using those services. And we currently know cloud functions can be provisioned, cloud run can be provisioned, app engine can be provisioned easily. So compute engine, Kubernetes engine, we need to ignore it because they cannot be provisioned without a VPC. So still we can use cloud build. That's an indication. Now if we go to the next part, cloud scheduler and cloud task. These are components of app engine previously and now made as a separate component. So definitely they can be used as uh, without a VPC. That is one thing. Container registry. So for the first shot, you may say, because Kubernetes itself it cannot be provisioned, why do we need a Google container registry? The answer is you still need to use Google Container Registry or GCR. The reason is Cloud Run, which behind the scene uses containers, can still be provisioned without a VPC. So you can use Container Registry or you can propose Container Registry for the startup organization. source code repository or source repository, which is nothing but private GitHub, you need to definitely use that. Otherwise, they cannot store their code. So you need to propose that. And the most important thing for the developers is always the endpoint. Definitely, you need to give that endpoint. So you can propose that. Now moving on to the next category, which is the big data category. So let's go by component. So the first component is Cloud Composer, which is nothing but a fully managed Apache Airflow instance. So I have already filled in the form, and let's select some of the stuffs which I have not filled in. So zone, all those stuffs, machine type, you can fill in. But at the bottom, if you just go and look into the networking part, that should give you a red signal or a red flag saying that it also depends on VPC. Since when I click on this, the drop down does not populate because we don't have any VPC. So that indicates you cannot provision Cloud Composer. So moving on to the next component, which is Dataproc, manage Apache Hadoop and Spark cluster. So for people who have worked with Hadoop, Dataproc will know behind the scene Dataproc uses virtual machines. So since virtual machines itself cannot be provisioned without a VPC, Dataproc can also be provisioned. But to have the completeness of the video, let me just click on create with all the default settings, and you will see a error popping up saying that it does not have a network. So Dataproc cannot also be provisioned. Moving on to the next component, which is PubServe, which is a global real-time messaging service. Let's try to create a topic. Demo no VPC. Alright, the topic is created, and if you want to publish it, make sure you create a subscriber and then publish it. But in the interest of the demo, to make it quick, I'm just simply publishing it so that it shows that without your VPC, you can still publish your create a topic and publish your content. Let's move on to the next component, which is data flow. So which behind the scene uses Apache. It's an execution engine for your Apache Beam. So I have filled in the form. I have used a template which is PubSub to BigQuery. This is the first video which I did in my channel. So where I do a streaming analytics by pushing JSON content via PubSub, gets processed or transformed in data flow, and the data will be persisted in BigQuery. It's the same template which I'm using here. Now I have already filled in the form. Let's click on submit or run job, and behind the scene this activates or creates a managed instance group. That is the thing. If it's a managed instance group, it's nothing but groups of virtual machines, and virtual machines needs a VPC. Since it does require a VPC, you get an error saying that the default network is not available. So data flow cannot be also used. Moving on to the next one of the favorite product for most of us, BigQuery, enterprise petabyte scale enterprise data warehouse. So let's try to create a data set in our project. Let's give it as BQ underscore no VPC, and let's provision in Mumbai. Click create, and looks like this thing also gets provision data. Our data set got provisioned. If you still want to verify whether you can create tables or not based on your access, you should definitely be able to create. But let's try to quickly create a table here. So click on this, create table. Let's create an empty table. Let's call it as demo, and let's add one column, name, and click on create. And the table is also created. If you just expand it, you should see it. We are able to create the table, and if you just query it, it should definitely show it is having empty. But let's, as a part of the video, let's try to query it to show that the table exists and there's no content there. Moving on to the next component, so IOT Core, which is under big data category itself. Let's just give a name here, demo. Select the region. It's available under limited regions. Let me use Taiwan, the closest one to me, and the default PubSub for the topic, I'll use that, and the topic also I'm just make sure I use all the one which I already have, the PubSub topics. And let's click on create and see whether the registry gets created under IoT Core. So looks like it gets created. So IoT Core can be definitely used without a VPC. Now I guess we have finished almost all the components under big data. So let's just do a quick recap. Scroll down to big data components. The only thing which can be provisioned under big data are PubSub, BigQuery, IoT Core. Oh, so we have not finished data prep. Let me just go to data prep. So the data prep part, if you see, which is like without creating, it's like primarily for creating your provisioning your preparing your data without writing a single line of code. And in data prep, when you process or when you upload all the necessary data and click on create recipes and click on run job, behind the scene it creates a Apache Beam pipeline which gets executed on data flow. And by this time we know data flow cannot be provisioned without a VPC, so data prep also cannot be proposed. So now a quick recap. If you just go to the big data components, I have ignored data catalog and data fusion because they are in beta stage. As a cloud architect, proposing products which are in beta stage may not be a good choice, so I'm ignoring it. So the only products which can be proposed under big data category is PubSub, BigQuery, IoT Core. That's it. Now moving on to the next category, which is artificial intelligence. So if you go to artificial intelligence, there's one important part which is called as AI platform, which was previously called as ML engine. Now they call it as this thing. And in this, they have tried to put lots of other components also. Data Lab was one of the products, so that they have made it as notebook. Now let's try to provision this Data Lab. In my understanding, it should not be provisioned. The reason is Data Lab, the S12 Data Lab behind the scene was using virtual machines. So this also should not be provisioned. But let's give a try. So if I try to create a notebook instance, it immediately gives me an error that there's no network available. All right, so going back to the dashboard, and there's one more thing, which is the actual ML engine. I would say the model training part. This was actually previously called as Cloud ML engine. So where you upload the necessary data, the training data set, and run the job, which has a managed TensorFlow instance there. So this works without a VPC. I have tried it. I don't want to do this demo again because it's a longer process, but this is something possible to do. So now with all these things, let's try to wind up what and all components can be created without VPC or not. So this is the final set which we have arrived by doing a comprehensive demo. So under compute section, 3 services can be provisioned: App Engine Standard, Cloud Functions, and Cloud Run can be provisioned without VPC. Storage, under storage, we can create Bigtable, Datastore, Firestore, Cloud Storage, and Spanner is possible. Cloud SQL is possible without a VPC, but we don't want to propose that because the startup organization does not have any networking skills. Coming under big data, it's only 3 components: Cloud PubSub, BigQuery, and IoT Core. Under the developer tools and DevOps tools, you can use all the suite of products under Stackdriver. Cloud Build can be used, Deployment Manager, Endpoint can be used. The one which I have missed out here is Container Registry also can be used. I missed that part here. And under AI, you can use that the S2 Cloud ML, you can use it, but you cannot use the notebook part. So that's the video which I wanted to share. Thank you for watching.